Hi, my name is Bob and welcome to the homestead, y'all. I have some Concord grapevines and they need pruned back bad. I haven't pruned them back in 2 years, so this year I'm going to give them a good pruning. But before I do, I want to take a bunch of cuttings off these. When I planted these, it was a great place at the time, or I thought it was, to plant them. But when I went to put my trellis up, on this end of the grapevines there's plenty of dirt, but on the other end there is rock not 4 to 6 inches below the soil. So I've not been able to get a good trellis system for these. So what I want to do is take cuttings off of all of these this year. I'm going to move them over to another spot where I have more dirt and I can put a better trellis system for them. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to take some cuttings. I have a container here with water in it. I just have plain old water. And what I like to do when I take my cuttings is put them in water, leave them in water overnight so they can soak up as much moisture as they can. And then we'll go ahead and we'll plant them in some dirt, and come springtime they should sprout out. I usually have about a 60 to 70% success rate with these. So what we'll do today is we'll take probably about 40 or 50 cuttings off of these. Go ahead and put them in water, let them sit overnight, and then tomorrow we'll go ahead and make us up a bunch of pots with potting soil and sand mixture, and we'll go ahead and start these. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and just set my container on the ground. And you want to take about 4 or 5 nodes or sprouts like this on each cutting. Now I prefer a cutting that doesn't have these other pieces on it, so what I'll do is I'll cut those off and we'll come down here and we'll cut him straight off. Now on the top of this, I'm going to cut it at an angle, so I know that's the top. So I've cut that at an angle, you can see, and I've cut the bottom square. So I know this is the bottom of my cutting, so that's the part that'll go down into the dirt. So we'll just stick him in there in the water. And we're just going to go around here and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to cut it at an angle at the top and make sure we have 4 or 5 nodes on each cutting. Of course, this one has quite a few on it. You can see there's probably 7 or 8 on that one, so that one should root real well. We'll put him in the bucket and we're going to do the same thing. Cut the top at an angle, take 4 or 5 nodes. And so we end up with a piece that's probably about 1 foot long to 18 inches long. And that's what you want. 1 foot to 18 inches long works out great. So we're going to come in here. I'm going to take a bunch of these cuttings like this. And like I said, tomorrow we'll go ahead and put them in dirt and we'll root us a bunch of this Concord grapevine. It has us about 40 cuttings here. I'll let these sit overnight and then tomorrow we'll go ahead and plant them. We have our grapevines here. They've been sitting overnight. Today's a lot prettier day than yesterday was, thank goodness. We're still, I think it's 38 out, so we're in the high 30s today, but sunny. But I want to get these grapevines planted and get them in some pots. So I have some Pro Mix behind me. I have about a half a 5-gallon bucket of sand. So we're going to mix up about 1 part sand to 2 parts Pro Mix, which Pro Mix is mostly peat moss, and it has perlite in it and some regular potting soil, but it is real good to get cutting started from. So we're going to go ahead and use the Pro Mix, and we'll use some sand. So let's put it all in our wheelbarrow here, our yard cart. We'll mix it all up, and then we have a bunch of pots here, in 1-gallon pots that we're going to fill. And this is what we're going to start our cuttings in, are these pots here. So first thing I need to do is mix up some Pro Mix and some sand. Just cut up our little chunks there. This Pro Mix has been sitting outside, so it's already wet. So I'm not going to have to put much water on this. All we need to do is mix it up. you have a concrete mixer, you can mix this sand and pro mix in it. That makes it a lot easier. And I have one, but I'm not going to get it out for this little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and pot up some of these. What I'm going to do is just fill this pot about 3/4 full. And I am going to I have some worm castings in this bucket. I'm going to put just a little bit of worm castings down in there. Mix it up. That'll just give these plants a little bit of nutrients, because I'm going to leave them in these pots for a little while before I plant them this spring. So that's going to give them a little bit of nutrients. So you can see it's about 3/4 of the way, maybe a little more than that, 7/8 full. And then I'm going to take cuttings, and I'm just going to take 2 or 3 and put in each one of these pots. So I know this is the top, this is the bottom. You want to make sure each one of them that you have it the correct way. Stick it down in there. Now, I like to at least get 2 of these nodes down in the soil, and then I'll push down on this soil and I'll pack it around it. So we'll do all 3 of these. That one's a little long. I'm going to get a shorter one to put in with these. There we go. So now I'm going to pack the soil where I make sure that it gets good contact. Now, I didn't push it all the way to the bottom of the pot. I'll stop about 1 inch from the bottom. So not all the way down. Now, if you want to use some root tone on these, you can. It does help your rate a little bit, but I'm not going to use any root tone on these. Now, we'll fill that back up from where I've packed it down with my hands, and that's what we have. Now I'm just going to set these over here in the garden spot, and once the weather starts to warm up, these will start to root, and you'll see sprouts coming out on the top of them. So I have quite a few to do, so let's do a bunch here. I'll do one more on film, and then I'll just do it in time lapse. Fill it about 3/4 of the way up, and I just pull a little out, put a little bit of worm castings in there, put a little dirt back on it, and we'll put 3 cuttings. And like I said, I don't push it all the way to the bottom. Stop about 1 inch from the bottom, and once I get them in there, then I'll pack the dirt around. And that just makes sure that it gets good contact with the soil. Now, that's what it looks like once I pack it. Now, you want to keep these moist but not soaking wet, because if they stay too wet, they're going to rot on you and they won't root. So we'll go ahead and pack the rest, put the rest of the soil in. Just give it a good shaking and tapping, and that's it. I don't pack it around the top of it. We'll set him down. We'll do one more here real quick. soil in, worm castings, and fill it up to about the 3/4 mark. About like that. And take our 3 cuttings. Now you could put 4 in one of these if you wanted. I just like doing 3 in each one. And then pack it down around it. Just like that. Now I'll just do a time lapse on the rest of these. Okay, that has all of our cuttings. We ended up with 16 1-gallon pots. Of course, with 3 cuttings in each one. So our ultimate goal here is to have at least one of these sprout in every pot. If that happens, we're going to be in great shape. That'll give us 16 different grapevines to plant. We started with 4, and we get just about all the grapes we can make grape jelly with and grape juice out of right now. But I want to move those, so that's why we took cuttings. We're going to move these to a different spot to where I can build a better trellis system, to where we can just walk directly underneath them to harvest the grapes. So it'll take a few years. Once these sprout and get growing, it'll take a few years before we start getting grapes off of them. By then our other grapevines, I can move those later. So that's our ultimate goal. I'll make another video later in the spring and I'll show you what these look like before we plant them, and then we'll make a video on planting these and doing the trellises also. Okay, I finally carved out a little time to get back to our grapevine cuttings. Now, we took these back in February. This year was an odd year. In March, the end of March, these were already starting to sprout out, and we got a very cold snap, very cold snap. It got down to 8 degrees. The wind chill was down below 0. It killed some of the younger cuttings, and I'm going to show you the difference here real quick. The 1-year cuttings from last year's growth, I only had about a 50% root rate with them. So that means only half of them rooted. More than that had already sprouted out, but they died back when we got that cold spell. And some of these on the 2-year growth, which the canes that were at least 2 years old that I cut, we ended up with a 70% root rate. So 70% of them rooted, every single one of the pots, at least 2 of them out of the 3 rooted. Some of them, all 3 of the canes rooted, which is good. But it's July now. I should have done this last month in June, but I just did not have the time, couldn't carve out the time. But of course we rooted all these in 1-gallon pots. You can see there's roots out the bottom of these pots. So what I'm going to do now is, now we rooted these with sand and potting mix and peat moss mixture. So I'm going to transplant these into 2-gallon pots, and the soil I'm going to use to fill the rest of them is going to be pure compost. So I'll take them out of these 1-gallon pots. We'll put pure compost in the 2-gallon pots, transplant them in it. We'll leave them in it till about the 1st of September this fall, maybe the 2nd week of September, 1st week or 2nd week of September, and then I'm going to plant them in the ground. Now we did take cuttings. These are Concord grapes off our grapes. Where our grapes are now, I didn't do a very good job on the trellis system, so I'm going to do a better job on this. I'm going to use steel or galvanized steel, and I'm going to use wire rope. So it'll be 1/8 inch galvanized wire rope, and it'll be connected to steel post. And I'm going to do them about 7 feet tall. That way we can walk directly underneath them. I will have to prune these from maybe a small ladder or small step stool because it'll be so high. But I would rather have them up higher than what we have now. And plus, using the steel, I know it's going to be there the rest of my life, probably the rest of my children's life. So I won't have to worry about the strength of it. I won't have to worry about it collapsing using wood. So I think it'll be a lot better, but I'll show you that this fall, what kind of system I'm going to build for that. and we'll get these transplanted in the fall. And I like planting any perennials, any fruit trees, any berry bushes. I like planting them in the fall because I don't have to worry about watering them as much. Of course, they still need water in the wintertime, so if you have a dry spell in the wintertime, you still need to go out and water them. But by planting them the first or second week of September, now we're in zone 6, that still gives these roots plenty of time to get down into the soil. I'll cover the base of each one of these with a bunch of leaves. Once the leaves fall this fall, I'll take and I'll rake up a big pile 4 to 5 inches deep around each one of these plants to help protect the roots this winter time. And next spring we're going to have us some great grapevines. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to go ahead. I've got a bunch of them here I need to do. I just wanted to show you these from the cuttings. You saw earlier in the video back in February when we took these cuttings how we did it. And like I said, we still ended up with a 70% on the 2-year canes, a 70% root rate. So 70% of them rooted, and that's perfectly fine with me. So if you have any questions or comments on this video, please leave them below. And as always, thanks for watching.